Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're cracking open a really fascinating stack of source material.
Mm-hmm.
And it's all aimed at doing one thing. Separating, the genuine search for inner truth from all the noise.
There's a lot of noise out there.
Misconceptions, ignorance, even outright exploitation.
Huh.
So, our mission today is to cut through that fog.
Yeah, try and bring some clarity. Quickly.
Exactly. What does the spiritual path really demand? And maybe more importantly, what does it absolutely not demand?
It's such an essential clarification, really. So many people come to spirituality looking for peace or moksha, final liberation.
Right.
But the path itself is just so clouded. We've actually gathered some statistics that show how deep this misunderstanding goes.
Oh, really?
Yeah, from, basic misconceptions rooted in fear all the way to, well, the surprisingly high rate of fraud among so-called spiritual guides.
Okay, let's unpack that. Starting at the foundation seems right. Motivation, what actually drives people. And fear seems like a big one here.
Mm-hmm.
I was genuinely surprised by the numbers our sources found.
It's significant. A solid 30% of the population operates from a place of fear.
30%.
Yeah. They genuinely believe that if, say, God or saints get enraged with them, well, they'll be harmed.
And that shows up in real life, right?
Yeah.
Not just an abstract idea.
Oh, absolutely. In very tangible behaviors. Like the classic example you hear about, chain letters.
Ah, yes, those.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That pressure to forward it, send 25, 50 copies in the name of God or some saint.
Or else.
Or else you'll face some great loss. Or, just as common, feeling you have to give alms to a mendicant purely out of fear they might curse you.
It turns the whole thing transactional, like you're trying to bribe the universe.
Pretty much. It paints spirituality as this cosmic system of threats and payoffs rather than, a path of genuine growth.
Yeah, not exactly self-improvement.
No. But interestingly, the source material does offer a bit of the twist here.
Oh.
That fear, it's not entirely negative in its effect. There's an indirect social benefit.
How so?
Well, this kind of moral anxiety means that at least 30% of people actually hold back from doing wrong things, specifically because they fear sin and, divine punishment.
Huh. So fear itself acts as a sort of moral backstop for a chunk of society.
You could say that. A baseline, maybe?
That's a really intriguing point. Fear is a constraint. But, okay, if 30% are held back by fear, the next issue you mentioned, ignorance, seems, well, way bigger. Almost everyone.
It's incredibly pervasive. Around 80% of people are spiritually ignorant. And here's the really crucial part.
Yeah.
This ignorance, it has nothing to do with your level of worldly education. Illiterate, postgraduate, doesn't matter.
Why?
It's simply because the subject isn't formally taught anywhere.
Which means we end up trying to grasp these deep spiritual ideas with, the wrong tools, an intellectual approach that just doesn't fit.
Exactly. And you see that confusion between, say, imagination and reality popping up in weird places.
Like the artist example.
Perfect example. A famous artist writing about a traditional idol of Lord Ganesh and congratulating the, quote, anonymous sculptor for making this innovative idea real.
Treating the deity like, what, a clever design concept.
Completely. Totally unaware that for believers, deities like Ganpati really exist. They have a form. It's not just someone's clever idea.
Or that other example, focusing just on the outside stuff, like the organizers setting up for Dr. Ethavel's discourse.
Right. They were asking if he needed a charang, that decorative wooden stool, or saffron cloths.
All about the stage dressing.
Totally focused on the external look.
Duh.
They didn't get that the core of spirituality is about, well, the source says, painting one's inner self saffron with detachment.
That highlights a really common mistake, doesn't it? Believing spirituality is something you wear or sit on or just display.
Yeah, a performance.
And this confusion, the inner versus the outer, it can lead to some pretty deep philosophical errors too, like what Sri Aurobindo pointed out.
Yes, exactly. Sri Aurobindo saw that some spiritual paths made this incorrect split between spirituality and the universe.
How so?
They taught that reaching moksha meant you had to ignore the world, which, naturally, led people to become inactive, lose their passion for life, all supposedly for liberation.
But that's not the goal.
The sources argue a true path should actually make you more engaged, leading a life that benefits everyone, not checking out.
That makes sense. It also means we need to maybe rethink some common ideas,
Yeah.
like destiny. Our sources challenge that old saying, that believing in destiny makes you a coward.
They argue the exact opposite, actually.
Really?
Yeah, that someone who truly accepts their destiny, understands it, that person is the brave one, They have the potential to become a saint. It takes immense maturity.
Wow. That requires the kind of inner strength most people just aren't taught, are they?
Not at all. Which kind of leads us nicely into the next set of problems, the external traps. If ignorance is where many start, blind faith is often the first pitfall they hit.
And the number for that.
About 20% of people, according to our sources, operate on blind faith.
Okay. And the classic example here is the Vrindavan myth.
The Vrindavan myth, yeah. This belief that if you just manage to die in that specific sacred place, Vrindavan, you automatically get liberated. Doesn't matter what you did in life.
Seems a bit too easy.
Well, the source's counter-argument is pretty logical. The Lord is impartial.
Right?
So if just being in a certain location guaranteed liberation, then, corrupt people, criminals, murderers, they could just plan a trip and game the system.
Doesn't seem fair.
Exactly. Liberation or divine grace, it applies to the sincere devotee or maybe truly repentant sinner. It's not about geography.
It puts the responsibility back on the individual, not just magical thinking.
Right. But speaking of that, the source does make an interesting distinction between that kind of blind faith and, everyday superstitions.
No.
A black cat crossing your path, that sort of thing.
That's the difference.
They don't just dismiss those as silly superstitions. They actually categorize things like a cat crossing your path or a lizard falling on you as genuine premonitions.
Premonitions, like warnings.
Kind of suggesting maybe some difficulty is approaching. And the recommended response isn't fear or panic.
What is it?
Just chant the Lord's name to
Yeah.
sort of mitigate the effect. It reframes it from a silly fear into a chance for a spiritual response.
That's a completely different way of looking at it. Okay, so we have ignorance, blind faith, but unfortunately, some traps aren't just based on misunderstanding. Some are deliberate. Malice, exploitation.
And this is where we get into the really alarming territory of misuse and outright fraud.
The numbers here were pretty shocking when I read them.
They're destabilizing, honestly, for anyone sincerely looking. The sources state about 5% of people misuse spirituality just to make money. Okay, 5%.
But the other number,
The percentage of fraud among guides,
Yes.
it's staggering. 95% of so-called holy men are deemed fake.
95%. Just let that sink in. 95.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
almost everyone.
19 out of 20.
How can an average person even begin? If the odds are that bad, it makes you feel totally cynical before you even start.
It really does.
What are the sources actually using to define fake here? Is it just about money, or is it also like deep ignorance pretending to be wisdom?
That's a key question. The source seems to define fake primarily by focusing on those who exploit others financially, prioritizing money, external gain, over genuine spiritual teaching. And you see it in some really cynical practices, like that famous pranayama center example.
Oh, the one that advertised, what was it, 18 different courses?
18 separate courses for concentration, health, personality development, you name it.
Sounded impressive.
Looked great in the brochure, designed to attract the absolute widest audience.
Yeah.
But the reality,
Pretty yes.
they taught the exact same breathing exercise, the same pranayama in every single course.
Oh, way.
Pure marketing deception, just preying on people's specific anxieties to get them in the door.
Wow. And the sources also criticize how these fake holy men look, right? The focus on the externals.
Absolutely. The sandalwood paste, the elaborate tilaks on the forehead, fancy robes, all the external show.
Instead of, actually behaving virtuously.
Exactly. The external signs become a complete substitute for any kind of internal reality. It's all surface.
And that showmanship, I imagine, is often fueled by a massive ego.
Definitely. The sources mention about 5% of society falls into this trap, trying to educate the masses while being totally ignorant themselves, operating purely from ego.
And some of the quotes they use to show that ego,
Yeah.
they're just outrageous.
Unbelievable, aren't they? People who clearly know nothing about, say, Lord Sri Rama, but they'll write articles saying Rama was never ideal.
Just to provoke, probably.
Or even stating, now let us see to it that God retires. It's not guidance, it's just intellectual posturing. Performance art designed to get attention.
Which is pretty much the opposite of the humility you'd think is needed for spiritual progress.
The absolute antithesis.
Okay, so we've covered fear, ignorance, blind faith, fraud, ego. Now let's get to the core question for many listeners. Relevance.
Right.
There's this huge feeling out there. Our sources say 55% of people feel this way, that spirituality is optional.
Nice if you're into it, but not for me.
Exactly. Of what use is it to us? They think it's only for people with a natural inclination. This is where we really need to connect the dots for the listener.
And this is probably the single most critical takeaway from all the sources
Oh.
because that feeling, it's based on a massive misunderstanding of why people suffer.
Okay.
The source reveals a truly shocking figure. 80% the physical and psychological problems in an average person's life are caused by spiritual factors alone.
Wait, say that again? 80%?
80% physical problems, psychological problems rooted in the spiritual dimension.
That's not a niche interest then. That changes everything.
It completely reframes it.
If that's true, it means 4 out of every 5 people we know, our family, our friends, colleagues, ourselves, you listening, are dealing with chronic issues that maybe doctors or therapists can only partially help with because the actual root cause is spiritual.
That's the implication. It absolutely moves spirituality out of the hobby category and into essential life maintenance.
Because spiritual practice, then, is what gives you the ability to endure your destiny, to manage that huge chunk of life's pain.
Exactly. The pain that might otherwise be unavoidable. It builds resilience.
Okay, but even if people get that, even if they acknowledge it's useful, and the sources say 45% do know it's beneficial,
there's still a huge hurdle.
delay, procrastination.
Yes. Half of those people, 50% of the ones who know it's useful, say, yeah, I'll get around to it when I'm old.
The classic retirement plan for spirituality.
And the sources point out 4 really critical errors in thinking that way. It's actually a super risky strategy.
Okay, what are they?
First, obvious one. No guarantee you'll live that long.
Morbid but true.
Second, your physical and mental health generally weaken with age, making the focus and dedication needed for practice much harder.
Harder to start something new.
Third, related to that, it's just generally difficult to learn completely new skills effectively when you're older.
Yeah.
And fourth, maybe the most important spiritually, your subconscious mind just keeps accumulating impressions over your lifetime. Good, bad, indifferent. And the whole point of spiritual practice is to eliminate those impressions. Delaying just lets the spiritual baggage pile up higher and higher.
So the message is start now and start correctly. But even how people start can be a problem, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Another big trap. 80% of those who do start practicing.
80% again.
Yes. They fall into the trap of doing it based on their own intellect, picking practices they like or worshiping a deity they happen to prefer without real guidance.
The self-medication problem you mentioned earlier.
Exactly. It's like trying to be your own doctor for a complex illness you don't understand, or arguing your own case in court without a lawyer.
You're using your untrained mind to fix a spiritual issue.
Right. And then, predictably, when this self-directed practice doesn't yield any real benefit, what happens?
They get discouraged.
Their faith wavers. They think, see, this whole spirituality thing is bogus. They blame the path, not their incorrect approach.
Makes sense. What about other common misconceptions, like lifestyle choices? Marriage, for instance. Do you have to be single?
That's a common one. Sources say about 30% of seekers believe they shouldn't marry if they want to progress spiritually.
And the sources say.
They actually rebut that quite strongly. They argue progress can often be faster when you're living in society, in a family, dealing with work.
Faster. How?
Because you're constantly being tested at every step. You face friction, challenges, difficult people.
Real life.
Real life. Retiring to a cave in the Himalayas removes all that resistance, which sounds peaceful, but paradoxically, it can slow down your inner purification because you're not facing those tests.
Huh. Never thought of it that way.
Plus, there's the destiny angle again. The sources remind us. If you're destined to marry, you're going to marry. No amount of intellectual decision-making will stop it.
You can't outsmart destiny. Okay, and one last one here. The feeling that practice, like chanting, gets in the way of daily life. Your job, your duties.
Yeah, that feeling that it hinders your worldly responsibilities. The sources state the complete opposite is true.
Wow.
Chanting the Lord's name doesn't distract you. It actually increases your concentration. It helps you focus.
So you can actually do your job better.
Much better, potentially. It enhances. It doesn't impede.
Okay, this all brings us back to that crucial issue of guidance. The guidance gap. Who do we turn to? Priests, teachers, gurus?
And there are pitfalls with each. Many priests, for instance, they might know the rituals really well, the karma cand, the actions of worship.
They know how to do it.
Exactly. But they might be completely ignorant about the science behind those rituals, the why. They can perform the ceremony, but can't explain the spiritual purpose or effect.
And it's a similar problem with discourse teachers, isn't it? People giving lectures or sermons.
Yes, very similar. Many who give spiritual talks pravachans, curtains, they might sound great, but they often lack genuine, deep spiritual experiences themselves.
So they're repeating knowledge without having lived it.
Often, yes. And people listen, follow their advice, and can end up wasting years on practices that are totally wrong for their particular spiritual level or needs.
Which underlines the importance of a true guru. But even the guru's role is often misunderstood, especially thinking back to that 80% statistic about life's problems.
Massively misunderstood. The sources are crystal clear on this. A true guru is concerned solely with the spiritual progress of the disciple. Full stop.
Not with fixing their everyday problems.
No. So many people mistakenly think the guru is there to magically fix their job situation or their marriage problems or their health issues.
Like a cosmic problem solver.
Right. But the guru's actual function has no direct relation to eliminating those worldly obstacles. Their job is laser focused on guiding you towards liberation, towards moksha.
And because that focus is so internal on the spiritual state, a true seeker might look, well, strange to the outside world.
Completely misunderstood sometimes. The source gives that really powerful, if tragic, anecdote. The lady seeker whose husband was murdered.
Oh, yes, I remember reading that.
She accepted her destiny, her situation with this profound inner calmness because of her spiritual state. But how did the police and the public see it?
They saw her lack of outward hysterical grief as suspicious.
Exactly. They misinterpreted it as guilt or maybe a lack of love for her husband. They had no concept of the inner spiritual state that allowed her to withstand that immense pain with such fortitude.
It highlights how differently the world views things compared to someone on a deep spiritual path. Okay, before we wrap up and synthesize, there's one more interesting point. Secrecy.
Ah, yes. The idea of hidden knowledge.
Some people question why there's secrecy in what the source calls Aryadharma, traditional Hindu spiritual philosophy. Shouldn't knowledge be open to all?
It's a fair question. Sri Gulabhrav Maharaj apparently compared it to trade secrets in business.
Trade secrets? How?
Well, there seem to be two main concerns, according to the sources. One, if very profound spiritual knowledge is just thrown out there too openly, it can be easily misunderstood or trivialized by people who aren't ready for it.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And the second?
The second concern is that knowledge revealed without any care can fall into the hands of people who, frankly, aren't following the path, aren't living ethically. And this can lead people to think, oh, worldly life, making money, getting ahead. That's more valuable than this complex spiritual stuff. It could actually undermine the whole pursuit.
So secrecy as a form of protection. Protecting the knowledge and protecting people from misusing it or undervaluing it.
That seems to be the idea.
Okay, so pulling all these threads together,
Yeah.
it's quite a landscape of potential pitfalls.
Yeah.
We've got fear at the base,
Widespread ignorance, regardless of how smart you are in worldly terms.
then blind faith getting caught up in myths.
And the huge, huge problem of fraudulent guides. Remember that 95% figure?
95%, it keeps echoing.
And maybe the biggest danger for the average person, especially knowing that 80% of life's problems seem to have spiritual roots, is trying to figure it out intellectually on your own and, crucially, delaying, putting it off until old age.
Because if 4 out of 5 people really need this spiritual help, the need isn't someday, it's now.
Exactly. The need is immediate, and the path has to be chosen correctly, not just randomly.
Which makes finding true guidance absolutely critical. And it loops back to that secrecy idea too, doesn't it? If profound knowledge is sometimes protected so it's not misused, then here's the provocation for everyone listening. If 4 out of 5 of your deepest life challenges need a spiritual solution, and 19 out of 20 potential guides are fake, what is the one single non-negotiable principle you absolutely must use to tell a true guide from a fake one so you don't waste decades chasing a gimmick?
That really is the core question, isn't it? It all boils down to discernment. How do you develop that?
A question that really dictates whether you find genuine liberation or just. Keep polishing the external show. Food for thought. Thank you for engaging in this deep dive with us.